the storm hit harder than the weather service predicted. 20 minutes into the 3-hour drive to Boston, I turned around and headed home. Conference canceled, hotel reservation wasted, but sometimes nature makes decisions for you. I pulled into our driveway at 11:30, noting that Maren's car sat crooked in her usual spot. The porch light flickered. Probably needed a new bulb. Our Victorian house looked peaceful in the rain, all dark windows except for the kitchen glow spilling onto the wet walkway. Inside, I found Maren standing in the hallway, staring at our security panel like it held the secrets of the universe. She wore her silk pajamas, the expensive ones I bought her for Christmas, and her hair hung loose around her shoulders. Beautiful as always, but something felt wrong about the scene. "Rowan," she said, spinning around. "You're back early." Storm shut down half the interstate. I set my overnight bag down and watched her face. "Conference got postponed. What are you doing up?" I thought I heard something outside. Her voice carried that careful tone she used when choosing words. "I was checking the cameras." Our house came equipped with a smart security system, my handiwork from 3 years ago when we started the business. Motion sensors, door cameras, the works. As the tech guy in our partnership, I handled all the installations and maintenance. "Everything looks normal on the display," I said, stepping closer to the panel. "What kind of sound?" "Maybe a car door, or someone walking around." She gestured vaguely toward the front of the house. "I wanted to review the footage, but I can't remember how to access it." Strange. Maren knew our system better than most clients knew theirs. She helped me test it during installation, watched me demonstrate the interface dozens of times. But people forget things under stress, and late-night noises could rattle anyone. "Here, let me show you again." I tapped through the menu screens, pulling up the camera feeds. "You can scroll back through recorded footage using these arrows. See?" She leaned in close, watching intently as I navigated the interface. Her perfume smelled different tonight, heavier, like she'd applied extra before bed. Why would someone put on perfume to sleep alone? "How long do we keep the footage?" she asked. 1 week. After that, it automatically deletes to make room for new recordings." I demonstrated the timeline scrubber, showing her how to jump between different time periods. Pretty straightforward once you get the hang of it. "A week," she repeated, like she was memorizing the information. "And it's all stored on that little card?" "The SD card, yeah. Though we also have cloud backup for the important stuff." I watched her absorb this information with unusual focus. "Why? Planning to become a security expert yourself?" She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Just curious about how it all works. You know me, I like understanding our systems." That part was true. Maren had a sharp mind for business operations, which made her the perfect partner for our company. While I handled the technical installations, she managed clients, contracts, and marketing. We complemented each other professionally, or at least we used to. "Want me to check tonight's footage?" I offered. "See what made that noise?" "No, that's okay. I'm probably just being paranoid." She stepped back from the panel, wrapping her arms around herself. "Long day, you know? Sometimes your mind plays tricks." I nodded, though something still felt off about her behavior. Maren wasn't typically the paranoid type, and she'd never shown much interest in the technical details of our security system before tonight. "Well, I'm going to grab a drink and unwind," I said. "Want anything from the kitchen?" "I'm fine. Think I'll head up to bed." She paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Glad you made it home safely. Drive carefully next time if the weather looks bad." "Always do." I watched her climb the stairs, noting how she glanced back at the security panel one more time before disappearing into the darkness of the second floor. Something about that look bothered me. Too calculating, too focused for someone who'd just been startled by random noises. In the kitchen, I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey and sat at the counter thinking. 22 years of marriage teaches you to read the subtle signs, the small changes in routine and behavior that signal something beneath the surface. Tonight felt like one of those moments. The rain drummed against the windows while I sipped my drink and considered the possibilities. Maybe work stress was getting to her. We'd been pushing hard to expand the business lately, taking on bigger commercial clients and longer hours. Or maybe she really had heard something outside and felt genuinely spooked. But that question about the footage storage bothered me. Why would someone need to know how long security recordings were kept, unless they were worried about something being captured on camera? I finished my whiskey and headed upstairs, passing our bedroom where Maren was already under the covers, breathing with the steady rhythm of sleep. Or pretending to sleep. Hard to tell in the darkness. In my home office, I powered up the computer and logged into our security system remotely. The beauty of modern technology, I could access everything from anywhere with an internet connection. The camera feeds showed empty rooms and hallways, exactly what you'd expect at midnight in a quiet house. But curiosity made me scroll back through the evening's footage, starting from when I left for Boston around 6 o'clock. Nothing unusual for the first few hours. Maren moving around the house, watching television, normal domestic routine. Then, around 9:15, the front door camera captured something interesting. A car pulled into our driveway. Not Maren's Honda, but a dark sedan I recognized immediately. The driver got out and walked to our front door with the confident stride of someone who'd made this trip before. Blaine Dorsey, my business partner. The timestamp showed him entering the house at 9:23. The hallway camera caught him and Maren embracing, not the casual hug you'd give a friend, but something more intimate, more familiar. They talked for a few minutes in the foyer, their voices too quiet for the audio pickup, then moved deeper into the house. I fast-forwarded through the next hour, watching empty hallway footage until 10:47, when both figures reappeared. Blaine looked rumpled, his shirt untucked and hair messed. Maren wore a robe over what appeared to be nothing underneath. They kissed goodbye at the front door, a long, passionate kiss that left no doubt about what had happened during that missing hour. Blaine's car left the driveway at 10:52. 8 minutes later, I arrived home to find Maren asking about camera footage storage. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the frozen frame on my monitor. There it was. The explanation for tonight's strange behavior, the reason for her sudden interest in our security system. She wanted to know how long the evidence would exist. 1 week, I'd told her. 7 days before automatic deletion. But that assumed the footage stayed on the original SD card in the hallway camera. What she didn't know was that I'd upgraded our system 6 months ago to include redundant backups and cloud storage for all recorded material. The original files might disappear in a week, but copies would persist indefinitely in multiple locations. Professional paranoia, I'd called it when implementing the backup system. You never know when you might need historical footage for insurance claims or police reports. Now it looked like I'd need it for something else entirely. I opened a new folder on my desktop and began copying the relevant video files. The embrace in the foyer, the intimate goodbye kiss, the timestamps showing Blaine's arrival and departure. Everything necessary to document what had happened while I was supposed to be 3 hours away in Boston. My hands moved automatically through the file management tasks while my mind processed the implications. 22 years of marriage, 12 years of business partnership, and this was how both relationships ended. With my wife and my partner thinking they were clever enough to fool the guy who installed their security system. The irony was almost funny. Almost. I saved the copied files with innocuous names and backed them up to an encrypted drive. Then I created a second backup on a cloud server that neither Maren nor Blaine knew existed. Belt and suspenders approach. If they somehow discovered one copy, others would remain safe. By 1:30 in the morning, I had everything documented and secured. The evidence was bulletproof, the timeline was clear, and the betrayal was undeniable. Question was, what to do with this information? I could confront them directly, but that would just lead to denials and excuses. I could file for divorce immediately, but that felt too quick, too easy for them. They'd made me look like a fool in my own house, using my own security system to facilitate their affair. They deserved something more creative than a simple legal proceeding. No, this situation called for a more thoughtful approach, something that would make them understand exactly what they'd lost and exactly how stupid they'd been to think they could outsmart me in my own field of expertise. I shut down the computer and headed to bed, slipping under the covers beside my cheating wife. She stirred slightly when the mattress moved but didn't wake up. Or didn't pretend to wake up. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. The game had changed, and she didn't even know it yet. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities, new opportunities to turn their deception against them. But tonight, I'd sleep peacefully knowing that I held all the cards, and they had no idea the deck was stacked. 1 week, I'd told her. That's how long the footage would last. She was about to learn that some things last much longer than a week. Morning came with the kind of bright sunshine that follows heavy storms, all washed clean and deceptively peaceful. I woke up before my alarm, mind already working through the day's possibilities. Beside me, Maren slept deeply, her face relaxed and innocent in the early light. Innocent. Right. I showered and dressed quietly, letting her sleep while I planned my next moves. The copied video files were safely stored in multiple locations, but raw footage was just the beginning. If I wanted to handle this properly, I needed more information: phone records, email trails, maybe financial records showing how long this affair had been going on. Downstairs, I made coffee and checked the security system one more time. Everything appeared normal, just another quiet morning in suburban paradise. The hallway camera that had captured last night's activities sat in its bracket like nothing had happened, dutifully recording empty corridors and doorways. Maren appeared around 7:30, already dressed for work in her sharp business suit and professional makeup. She moved with her usual morning efficiency, grabbing coffee and checking her phone while her mind shifted into business mode. "How did you sleep?" she asked, not quite meeting my eyes. "Fine, you?" "Good, really good." She scrolled through emails on her phone, frowning at something on the screen. "Looks like the Peterson contract came through. We'll need to schedule the installation for next week." Normal conversation, normal routine. If I hadn't seen the footage, I'd never suspect anything was wrong. She was good at compartmentalizing, keeping her professional face intact while managing personal deceptions. It was actually impressive in a disturbing way. "I'll handle the Peterson job," I said. "You focus on the commercial accounts." "Perfect." She finished her coffee and gathered her purse and laptop bag. "See you at the office." I watched her leave, noting that she seemed more relaxed than last night, like she'd convinced herself that the camera footage wasn't a problem. Maybe she planned to delete it today, or maybe she thought 1 week was enough time to figure out a solution. She was about to discover how wrong she was. At the office, I arrived early and went straight to my workshop in the back. Our business occupied a small commercial building on the edge of town, front offices for client meetings, storage area for equipment, and my technical workspace where I programmed systems and tested new installations. The workshop was my domain, filled with computers, cameras, sensors, and all the electronic tools of the security trade. More importantly, it was where I kept the master server that managed all our client systems, including the one at our house. I logged into the home system remotely and navigated to the storage management interface. The original SD card in the hallway camera still contained last night's footage, but I could delete it from here without physically accessing the device. When Maren tried to check the camera later, she'd find nothing incriminating. But first, I needed to see what she would do. I set up a monitoring script to alert me whenever someone accessed our home security system, either locally or remotely. If Maren tried to delete the footage, I'd know immediately. If she tried to factory reset the camera, I'd get a notification. Any attempt to tamper with the evidence would be documented and time-stamped. Then I pulled up Blaine's employee file and started reviewing his access permissions. As a business partner, he had administrative rights to most of our systems, but not all of them. Specifically, he couldn't access the master server or the backup systems without my credentials. That was about to change. Not his access level, that was staying exactly where it was, but his awareness of what I could see and do with our technology. Time to make him a little paranoid. I crafted a careful email to all employees about routine security audits and system maintenance. Nothing threatening, just a standard IT announcement about reviewing access logs and updating passwords. But I made sure to mention that we'd be analyzing usage patterns and documenting all system interactions for the next week. Blaine would read that message and wonder if I'd noticed anything unusual. He'd start second-guessing every login, every file access, every digital footprint he'd left behind. Paranoia was a powerful tool when applied correctly. Around 9 o'clock, Maren arrived at the office and went straight to her desk. Through the workshop's window, I could see her checking emails and making phone calls, maintaining her professional routine. But I also noticed her glancing toward my workshop more often than usual, like she was keeping track of my activities. At 10:15, my monitoring script sent an alert. Someone was accessing our home security system remotely. I pulled up the access logs and watched in real time as Maren navigated through the camera interface. She went straight to last night's footage, scrolling through the timeline to find the relevant time period. When she reached 9 o'clock, she paused, probably seeing Blaine's car in the driveway. Then she tried to delete the files. The system prompted her for administrative credentials, which she didn't have. She tried her standard password, then a few variations, but none of them worked. Deletion of security footage required elevated permissions that only I controlled. I watched her try different approaches, attempting to overwrite the files, trying to access the SD card directly, even looking for a way to factory reset the entire system. Nothing worked. The footage remained intact and accessible, a permanent record of her betrayal. After 20 minutes of failed attempts, she gave up and closed the interface. Through the workshop window, I saw her pick up her phone and send a text message, probably to Blaine, letting him know that the evidence was still there and she couldn't remove it. Perfect. Now they were both worried. I gave them an hour to stew in their anxiety before making my next move. At 11:30, I walked out to the main office area and approached Maren's desk with a casual smile. "Hey, I'm getting some weird alerts from our home system," I said. "Multiple failed login attempts this morning. Everything okay?" Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, that was me. I was trying to check something from last night, but I couldn't remember the password." "What did you need to check?" "Just that noise I heard. I wanted to see if the cameras caught anything." She shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "But it's not important. Probably just a raccoon or something. I can pull up the footage if you want. Won't take a minute." "No, that's fine. Really, I don't want to bother you with something so trivial." I nodded, pretending to accept her explanation. "Okay, but let me know if you need help accessing the system. The security protocols can be tricky if you're not familiar with them." "Sure, thanks." I returned to my workshop, knowing that she'd immediately text Blaine about our conversation. They were probably panicking now, wondering how much I knew and what I planned to do with the information. The beauty of this approach was that I didn't have to do anything dramatic or confrontational. I just had to let them know that I was aware something was wrong, then sit back and watch them make mistakes while trying to cover their tracks. Around noon, Blaine showed up at the office. He rarely visited during the day, usually preferred to handle business remotely. But today he made a special trip. He went straight to Maren's desk, and they had a hushed conversation that lasted about 10 minutes. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told the story. Nervous glances, urgent whispers, hands gesturing toward my workshop. They were trying to figure out how to handle the situation, probably debating whether to confess or continue the deception. After Blaine left, Maren seemed more agitated. She made several phone calls, typed emails with unusual intensity, and kept checking her phone for messages. The stress was getting to her, and it would only get worse as the day progressed. At 2 o'clock, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I sent an email to Lisa Dorsey, Blaine's wife, with the subject line, "Security System Question." The message was brief and professional. "Hi Lisa, I'm updating our client database and wanted to confirm your contact information for the system we installed at your house last year. Also, we're implementing new backup procedures for all recorded footage. Can you verify that you're still okay with cloud storage for your security recordings? Thanks, Rowan." Lisa would probably call Blaine about the email, asking why I was suddenly interested in their security system and what I meant about backup procedures. More paranoia, more pressure, more opportunities for them to make mistakes. The afternoon passed quietly, but I could feel the tension building. Maren kept glancing at her phone, probably waiting for updates from Blaine. Every time I walked past her desk, she looked up with barely concealed anxiety. At 4:30, she finally approached my workshop. "Rowan, can we talk?" "Sure. What's up?" She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "I wanted to apologize for this morning. I know I seemed weird about the camera thing." "You seemed fine to me." "It's just, I've been stressed lately. Work stuff, you know? Sometimes I don't sleep well, and I get paranoid about noises and security." She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd noticed over the years. "I didn't mean to mess around with the system without asking." "No problem. That's what it's there for." "Right, but I was wondering—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "How long do we actually keep the footage? I mean, you said 1 week, but is that automatic? Or do you sometimes keep it longer?" There it was, the question she'd been building up to all day. She needed to know how much time she had before the evidence disappeared, or if it would disappear at all. "Depends on the situation," I said, watching her face. "Normal footage gets deleted after a week, but if there's something important, I can preserve it indefinitely. Security incidents, insurance claims, that kind of thing." "What would count as a security incident?" "Unauthorized access, suspicious activity, anything that might be relevant later." I leaned back in my chair, maintaining casual eye contact. "Why? Did you see something specific on last night's footage?" "No, nothing like that. Just curious about how it all works." She forced a smile. "I should let you get back to work." "Actually, since you're here, want me to show you last night's recordings? Might put your mind at ease about those noises." The color drained from her face. "That's okay. I'm sure it was nothing important. Won't take long. I can pull it up right now." "No, really, I don't want to waste your time." She backed toward the door. "Thanks for explaining everything." She left quickly, probably to call Blaine and report that I was offering to show her the footage. They'd interpret that as either a threat or a sign that I knew exactly what was on those recordings. Both interpretations were correct. At 5 o'clock, I packed up my equipment and prepared to leave the office. As I walked past Maren's desk, I noticed she was still on the phone, speaking in low, urgent tones. She looked up when I passed, covering the phone with her hand. "Heading home," I said. "See you there." But we both knew she wouldn't be coming home anytime soon. She had planning to do, strategies to discuss, maybe even another rendezvous to arrange. The pressure was making them reckless, and reckless people made exploitable mistakes. I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, thinking about the next steps in my plan. The psychological pressure was working. They were both worried and confused, unsure how much I knew or what I intended to do. But pressure alone wouldn't be enough. I needed something more decisive, more permanent, something that would make them understand exactly what they'd lost and exactly how foolish they'd been to betray me. The footage was just the beginning. By the time I was finished, they'd wish that a simple divorce was the worst thing they had to worry about. 1 week, I'd told her. But this game was going to last much longer than that. I spent the evening at home alone, which wasn't unusual lately. Maren had been working late more often over the past few months, or at least, that's what she'd been telling me. Now I understood where those extra hours were really going. Around 8 o'clock, she called to say she was having dinner with a potential client and wouldn't be home until late. I made appropriate supportive noises while privately wondering if client dinner was code for another session with Blaine. It didn't matter. I had work to do. In my home office, I began a systematic review of our financial records, phone bills, and digital communications. If this affair had been going on for months, there would be traces, patterns of behavior, unexplained expenses, communication records that told the real story. The phone records were particularly revealing. Starting about 4 months ago, Maren's calls to Blaine increased dramatically. Not just business calls during working hours, but evening and weekend conversations that lasted 30 or 40 minutes. Personal calls, intimate calls, the kind of extended conversations that happen when people are falling into something deeper than a professional relationship. Credit card statements showed restaurant charges that didn't match her claimed whereabouts, hotel expenses during supposed business trips that I wasn't invited to join, and purchases at stores she'd never mentioned visiting. The financial evidence painted a clear picture of deception that went far beyond last night's encounter. But the most damning evidence came from her laptop. Maren was careful about digital security in business contexts, but like most people, she was sloppy about personal privacy. Her laptop automatically saved passwords, cached email drafts, and stored browsing history. A quick review revealed months of deleted emails, cleared browser sessions, and communication patterns that she'd tried to hide. The email drafts were especially interesting. Messages to Blaine that she'd written but never sent, probably because she was smart enough to know that written communications could be discovered later. But the drafts remained in her system, and they told a story of growing intimacy, shared secrets, and plans for a future that didn't include me. One draft, dated 3 weeks ago, was particularly enlightening. I can't keep pretending everything is normal at home. Rowan is getting suspicious, and I think we need to be more careful about when and where we meet. Maybe it's time to consider making this official. Another, from last week. He's been asking questions about my schedule, and I'm running out of excuses. How much longer do we have to keep up this charade? So they weren't just having an affair, they were planning to end their respective marriages and start fresh together. The betrayal ran deeper than simple infidelity. They were actively plotting to dismantle the life I'd built while pretending to be my loving wife and trusted business partner. That changed everything. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. I copied all the relevant files to my secure backup system, then began researching legal options. Divorce proceedings, asset protection, business partnership dissolution. If they wanted to play games with my life, I needed to understand all the rules and make sure I came out ahead. Around 11:30, I heard Maren's car in the driveway. I quickly closed all the incriminating files and opened a spreadsheet of client installations, making it look like I'd been working on routine business tasks. She came upstairs a few minutes later, moving quietly like she was trying not to disturb me. "How was dinner?" I asked without looking up from the computer. "Good. Productive. I think we'll get the contract." She paused in the doorway, studying my face. "What are you working on so late?" "Peterson installation planning, trying to figure out the optimal camera placement for their property layout." I gestured at the spreadsheet, which actually was a legitimate work document. "Complex setup, lots of blind spots to cover. Sounds challenging." "Nothing I can't handle. Just takes time to get it right." I finally looked at her, noting that her makeup was fresh and her clothes were unwrinkled. If she'd really been at a business dinner, she'd cleaned up afterward. "How's the client? Anyone I know?" "New prospect. Manufacturing company looking to upgrade their entire security infrastructure." She moved toward the bedroom, clearly wanting to end the conversation. "Big potential contract if we can meet their requirements." "Great. We could use the revenue." She disappeared into the bedroom, and I heard the shower start running, washing off the evidence of wherever she'd really been tonight. The lies came so easily to her now, so smoothly integrated into normal conversation, that I might never have noticed if I hadn't seen that security footage. I finished my work and shut down the computer, mind already moving to tomorrow's plans. The psychological pressure was working, but I needed to escalate the situation before they had time to develop countermeasures. Time to bring Lisa Dorsey into the game. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to the office before Maren was even awake. I had phone calls to make and arrangements to finalize, and I wanted privacy for the conversations. Lisa Dorsey answered on the second ring. "Hi, Rowan. I got your email yesterday about the security system. Is everything okay? That's actually why I'm calling. We've had some technical issues with our backup servers, and I wanted to make sure all our client data is properly protected." I kept my voice professional, businesslike. "Can you meet me this morning to review your system settings? I'd rather handle this in person than over the phone." "Of course. Is it urgent?" "Not urgent, but important. How's 10 o'clock? "Perfect. Should Blaine be there too?" "Actually, I'd prefer to speak with you privately first. Some of this involves personal privacy settings that you might want to review before including other family members." She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown, away from both our offices and any chance of Blaine or Maren discovering the conversation. This was going to be delicate, and I needed to handle it carefully. At 10 o'clock, I found Lisa at a corner table in the back of the coffee shop. She was an attractive woman in her early 40s, professionally dressed and clearly successful in her own right. She'd always been friendly during our business interactions, but we'd never had much personal contact. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, sitting down across from her. "I know this is unusual." "No problem. What kind of technical issues are we talking about?" I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder of screenshots, not the incriminating footage, but legitimate system logs and backup reports that looked official and concerning. "We discovered some unauthorized access attempts on several client systems," I said. "Nothing successful, but enough to make us review all our security protocols." She studied the screenshots, frowning at the technical details. "Is our system compromised?" "Not compromised, but potentially vulnerable. The thing is, some of the access attempts seem to be coming from inside our company network." I paused, watching her reaction. "I need to ask you some sensitive questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. Has Blaine been acting differently lately? Changes in routine, unexplained absences, unusual interest in security systems or surveillance?" Her expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "Why would you ask that?" "Because some of the unauthorized access attempts are traced to his credentials. I'm trying to figure out if his account was hacked or if—" I let the implication hang in the air. "Or if he's doing something he shouldn't be doing." "I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I need to understand what's happening before I can fix it." Lisa was quiet for a long moment, staring at the laptop screen. When she looked up, her eyes were hard. "What kind of unauthorized access?" "Attempts to view recorded footage from systems he doesn't normally manage, including residential systems belonging to other employees." I closed the laptop and leaned forward. "Lisa, I think your husband might be having an affair." The words hung between us like a physical presence. She didn't look surprised, hurt, angry, but not surprised. "You have proof?" "I have security footage from my house showing him and my wife together. Multiple occasions, intimate behavior, clear evidence of an ongoing relationship." She absorbed this information with the calm composure of someone who'd been suspecting the truth for a while. "How long?" "Based on what I've found so far, at least 4 months. Probably longer." "And you're telling me because?" "Because they're planning to leave us. I found email drafts discussing divorce plans and a future together. This isn't just an affair. They're actively working to end our marriages." Lisa nodded slowly, her business mind already working through the implications. "What do you want from me?" "Cooperation. They think they're being clever, but they don't understand how much evidence they've left behind. If we work together, we can make sure they don't get away with this. What kind of cooperation? I opened the laptop again and showed her a different set of files: financial records, communication logs, travel expenses that didn't match claimed business activities. Help me document everything: your access to Blaine's accounts, my access to Maren's activities combined with the security footage and digital evidence. We build an airtight case that protects our interests and makes sure they pay for what they've done. She studied the evidence for several minutes, her expression growing colder as the scope of the deception became clear. They've been using our money to fund their affair, she said finally. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts. Blaine's been lying about business expenses. Maren, too. Fake client meetings, imaginary conferences, fictional dinner appointments. They've been stealing from both of us to pay for their betrayal. What's your plan? I outlined my strategy: systematic documentation of all evidence, coordinated pressure to force mistakes, and careful timing to maximize the impact when we finally confronted them. Nothing illegal, nothing violent, just methodical exposure of their deception using their own actions against them. Lisa listened carefully, asking pointed questions and suggesting improvements. She had a sharp mind for strategy, and her anger was making her creative. When do we start? She asked. We already have. I've been building psychological pressure for the past 2 days, making them paranoid and uncertain. Now that you're involved, we can coordinate our efforts and really make them sweat. She smiled for the first time since sitting down, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Good. They deserve everything that's coming to them. We spent another hour planning specific tactics and coordinating our schedules. By the time we left the coffee shop, we had a comprehensive strategy for exposing the affair and protecting our respective interests. Blaine and Maren thought they were smart enough to fool their spouses and steal their futures. They were about to learn that intelligence without wisdom is just elaborate stupidity. The game was no longer one-on-one. Now it was 2 against 2, and we held all the cards. Let the real fun begin. Lisa proved to be an excellent partner in this endeavor. Within hours of our meeting, she'd already begun implementing her part of our coordinated strategy. She called me that afternoon with an update. I confronted Blaine about the business expenses, she said. Told him I was reviewing our tax documents and found some charges that didn't make sense. How did he react? Panic. Pure panic. He started making excuses about client entertainment and business development, but he couldn't explain specific meetings or provide receipts. She sounded satisfied. Then he asked if I'd been talking to you about company finances. Perfect. Now he'd be wondering what I knew and what Lisa suspected. The paranoia would eat at him, making him more likely to make mistakes. What did you tell him? That you'd mentioned some irregularities in the expense reports, and I wanted to make sure everything was legitimate for tax purposes. She paused. He's scared, Rowan. Really scared. Good. Keep the pressure on, but don't push too hard yet. We want them nervous, not desperate enough to do something drastic. That evening, I implemented the next phase of my plan. When Maren came home from work, I was waiting in the kitchen with a bottle of wine and dinner from her favorite restaurant. What's the occasion? She asked, clearly suspicious of the romantic gesture. Can a husband surprise his wife with a nice dinner? I poured 2 glasses of wine and handed her one. We've both been working so hard lately, I thought we deserved a quiet evening together. She accepted the wine, but remained wary. This is sweet, but I actually have some calls to make tonight. Client follow-up from yesterday's meeting. The manufacturing company? Right. They want to move quickly on the proposal, so I need to get back to them with some additional details. More lies, delivered with practiced ease. But I could see the stress beneath her composed exterior, the slight tremor in her hands, the way she avoided direct eye contact, the tension in her shoulders. No problem. Business comes first. I raised my glass in a toast. To successful partnerships. She clinked her glass against mine, missing the double meaning entirely. To partnerships. We ate dinner while making small talk about work and local news, maintaining the facade of normalcy, while both of us knew something fundamental had changed. She kept checking her phone, probably waiting for messages from Blaine about his conversation with Lisa. Around 8 o'clock, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and immediately stood up. "I'm sorry, but I need to step out for a bit. Client emergency. They want to meet tonight to discuss some security concerns." "On a Thursday night? Must be serious." You know how it is with nervous clients. They get worried about something and want immediate reassurance. She was already grabbing her purse and keys. "I'll be back in a couple hours." "Drive safely." I watched her leave, then immediately called Lisa. "She just left for another fake client meeting," I reported. "Probably heading to meet Blaine somewhere. He left 20 minutes ago, told me he had to handle a business crisis that couldn't wait until morning." Lisa's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Want to follow them?" "No need. I know exactly where they're going." 3 months earlier, I'd installed a tracking app on Maren's phone, ostensibly for safety reasons, in case of emergencies or accidents. She'd agreed to it readily, probably thinking it demonstrated trust and openness in our marriage. Now, it was about to serve a very different purpose. I pulled up the tracking interface on my laptop and watched the little blue dot that represented Maren's location. She was driving across town toward the commercial district, probably heading for the same hotel they'd been using for their previous encounters. "Lisa, can you access Blaine's location through his phone? He has GPS tracking enabled for business purposes. Let me check." A pause, then, "He's at the Riverside Inn on Commerce Street. Same place Maren is heading. They're not even trying to be creative about it. What do we do now?" "Now we document everything. Get photos if you can, but don't let them see you. We want evidence, not confrontation. Not yet." Lisa agreed to handle surveillance while I worked on the digital evidence. Over the next 2 hours, I systematically copied every relevant file from Maren's laptop, phone backups, and cloud storage accounts. Email drafts, deleted messages, browser history, financial records, everything that painted a picture of the affair's timeline and scope. The evidence was overwhelming. 4 months of deception, dozens of secret meetings, thousands of dollars in hidden expenses, and detailed plans for divorcing their respective spouses. They'd been living double lives with remarkable thoroughness, maintaining perfect facades at home while building an entirely separate relationship. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated their partners. Around 10:30, Lisa called with her report. "I got pictures of them entering the hotel together, and I confirmed the room number. They're registered under a fake name, but it's definitely them." "Excellent work. Did anyone see you?" "I was careful. Parked across the street with a clear view of the entrance." She paused. "Rowan, seeing them together like that, it makes it real, you know? All these months of suspicion, and now I have proof." "I know. But remember, we're not the victims here anymore. We're the ones in control." "You're right. What's next?" "Tomorrow we start applying serious pressure. Time to make them understand that their secret isn't secret anymore." The next morning, I arrived at the office early and prepared a special surprise for my business partner. I printed out several of the most incriminating photos Lisa had taken, along with timestamps and location data that clearly established when and where they'd been taken. Then I waited. Blaine showed up around 9 o'clock, looking tired and nervous. He went straight to his office and closed the door, probably trying to figure out how to handle the growing suspicion from both our wives. I gave him 30 minutes to settle in, then knocked on his door. "Got a minute? I want to discuss the Peterson installation." "Sure, come in." I entered his office and closed the door behind me, then placed the photographs face down on his desk. "Actually, I wanted to talk about something else." I flipped over the first photo, showing him and Maren entering the hotel. "Interesting client meeting last night." The color drained from his face. He stared at the photograph like it might disappear if he looked at it hard enough. "Rowan, I can explain." Can you? Because I have about 50 more photos from the past 4 months, plus video footage, financial records, and communication logs that tell a pretty clear story. I flipped over the remaining photos one by one. Want to try explaining these? He looked at the evidence spread across his desk, his hands shaking slightly as the full scope of his exposure became clear. How long have you known? Long enough. The question is, what are we going to do about it? What do you want? I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. Fear, guilt, desperation, all the emotions I'd hoped to see. I want you to understand that you've made a very expensive mistake. This business, this partnership, your marriage, your reputation in this town, all of it is at risk now. Are you going to tell Lisa? Lisa already knows. She's the one who took these pictures. His face went completely white. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. Oh yes. Your wife knows about the affair, knows about the financial deception, knows about your plans to divorce her and start fresh with my wife. I gathered up the photos and stood. The only question now is how much damage you want to suffer before this is over. What can I do? How can I fix this? You can't. It's too late for fixing anything. But you might be able to minimize the consequences if you're smart about how you handle the next few days. I left him sitting in his office, staring at his hands and probably calculating how much his betrayal was going to cost him. The psychological pressure was working perfectly. He was scared, isolated, and beginning to understand that his actions had consequences. Now it was Maren's turn. I found her at her desk, reviewing client contracts with apparent concentration. She looked up when I approached, and I could see the stress in her eyes despite her professional composure. "Morning," she said. "How's the Peterson planning going?" "Fine, but I wanted to ask you about last night's client meeting. How did it go?" "Good, really good. They're definitely interested in moving forward." "Great. Which company was it again?" A moment's hesitation. "Riverside Manufacturing." "Interesting name. I don't think I'm familiar with them." I pulled out my phone and pretended to search for information. Can't find any listing for a Riverside Manufacturing in this area. Are they new? They're based in the next county, expanding into our market." "Ah. And you met with them at their offices?" "No, they preferred to meet at a neutral location, the Riverside Inn." She'd walked right into the trap, confirming details that matched the surveillance evidence. Now, she was committed to a story that I could easily disprove. The Riverside Inn? Nice choice for a business meeting. I put away my phone and smiled. I'm sure it was very productive. Something in my tone made her look at me more carefully. "Rowan, is everything okay? You seem different today." "Different how?" "I don't know. Like you know something I don't." "Maybe I do. Or maybe you know something I don't." I leaned against her desk, maintaining casual eye contact. "Want to compare notes?" She stared at me for a long moment, clearly trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. The uncertainty was eating at her, just as I'd planned. "I should get back to work," she said finally. "Good idea. Productive day ahead, I'm sure." I returned to my workshop, knowing that she'd immediately call Blaine to discuss the conversation. They were both rattled now, both wondering how much evidence existed and what we planned to do with it. The beautiful thing about psychological warfare is that the targets do most of the work themselves. Fear and guilt are powerful motivators, making people paranoid and prone to mistakes. Blaine and Maren were already starting to turn on each other, each wondering if the other had said something that compromised them both. By lunchtime, the stress was showing on both of them. Hushed phone conversations, nervous glances, the kind of agitated behavior that made it obvious something was wrong. Other employees were starting to notice, which added another layer of pressure. Perfect. Let them worry about what people were thinking, what rumors might be spreading, what consequences were building around them. The trap was set, the pressure was mounting, and they were running out of options. Time for the final phase.